Redemption arcs can be some of the most rewarding character journeys to watch play out in movies and TV shows. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes, and we'd like to imagine that we'd be able to make things right and come back from however we may have faltered.
I had gone from homeschool jungle freak to shiny plastic to most hated person in the world to actual human being.
Well-done redemption arcs give us the opportunity to experience this growth vicariously, while poorly done arcs can just make us dislike a character even more. So let's take a closer look at redemption arcs on screen, when they work and when they don't, and what we really take away from them. Just a heads up that since we'll be talking about the end of some characters' arcs, there will be some spoilers ahead. So here's a rundown of the films and shows we'll be covering in this video. The desire for redemption stems from first having done something wrong, but what that entails can vary widely depending on the character and the story. The most important part about a redemption arc is that it isn't just one moment, but instead happens over time as a character encounters new obstacles and meets new people that change their perspective. Seeking redemption doesn't necessarily mean that one had to be an inherently bad person. Often those seeking redemption have just found that, over time, they've found themselves going down a pretty dark path and are now looking to turn things around. On The Bear, Richie's abrasive, slacker mentality has initially gotten him to a pretty unhappy place in his life. But in the second season, he finally gets his moment to turn this around. He finally embraces working as a team and thinking about everyone in the restaurant, the staff and the guests, and how to make everything work best for the whole.
Send it. Chef, can I bring it to the table?
Go get him, Richie.
Melissa's biggest problem on How to Die Alone is how she's let her fear and lack of self-confidence totally rule, and in many ways ruin, her life. Like Richie, her redemption is about personal growth. She has to learn to love herself and find the fire within her to carve out a positive place for herself in the world. Breaking Bad's Jesse is an archetypal good person sent down a bad path by circumstance. As he becomes disillusioned with this world, he also comes to resent his role in it more and more. While he's tried to avoid hurting others, it's been unavoidable. Jesse doesn't really get a proper redemption arc within the run of the original show, but instead in the follow-up film El Camino.
Put things right.
No.
Sorry, kid, that's the one thing you could never do.
He realizes that while he can't undo the past, he can take control of his life and move forward, and escape the horrifying existence he had seemed doomed to. We'd all like to think having that one big epiphany is enough to change us forever, but the reality is that it often takes a few times for the lesson to really stick and lead to permanent change for the better. This is often a major theme of sports movies and shows, where the team must learn a lesson, usually that they need to work together to succeed, before they're able to win the big game.
This is about more than just football, gentlemen. It's about adversity and how we stand up to it. No one said they were going to hand us the playoffs.
On Schitt's Creek, the Rose family have to learn to leave behind their self-centered and materialistic ways, but it's slow going.
We didn't think that you'd want to hang out with regular people.
Regular people? I mean, they made us who we were. What am I trying to say?
We love regular people.
They have a hard time adjusting to their new lifestyle and accepting that it isn't just a temporary blip, but they are indeed regular human beings just like everyone else. But over the course of the show, and with a lot of help from their new friends, they are able to become better people.
I'd like to thank you all for helping to save my family over these past few years. I don't think we could have gotten through without you all.
Crazy ex-girlfriend Rebecca finds herself following the same destructive patterns over and over, creating havoc in her life and the lives of everyone in her orbit. Her life really begins to turn around when she seeks treatment and finds out that what was driving her down those unhealthy paths was her undiagnosed mental illness.
I hope I can get the help that I need, but the truth is, I don't know what the future holds.
You know, for someone who's quote-unquote crazy, you sound pretty sane.
Armed with a better understanding of herself and a new willingness to be kind to herself, she's able to both take better care of herself and make amends with the people whose feathers she ruffled along the way. Time loop stories are a more literal version of this needing to relearn a lesson. Characters find themselves repeating the same period of time, often a day, over and over until they're able to figure out where they went wrong and how they need to better themselves. Groundhog Day's Phil has to relive the same day again and again until he learns the value of true selflessness.
No matter what happens tomorrow, or for the rest of my life, I'm happy now. Because I love you.
In Palm Springs, Sarah and Niles are able to escape their loop by working together, finding power in their own agency, and making active choices to change their circumstances.
I hope that blowing ourselves up works, but it's really irrelevant to me as long as I'm with you.
Sometimes a character's issues all stem from one big mistake they made, usually harming someone else, and so their redemption arc follows them attempting to set that right. On Happy Endings, Alex's problem isn't that she was unhappy in her relationship with Dave, but that she ended things by running away from their wedding with some guy she hooked up with. She has to work to repair her friendship with Dave so that the whole group dynamic doesn't fall apart. Labyrinth sees teenager Sarah wishing that the goblins from her book would come and take away her annoying baby brother, and she's immediately filled with regret when that actually happens. She has to solve the Goblin King's labyrinth to save her brother, and also finds that she's grown a lot along the way. In Bruges is an interesting exploration of the gray areas of morality and redemption. It follows Ray, an amateur hitman who becomes distraught when he accidentally kills a child in the midst of carrying out a hit. Ray's boss Harry tells his mentor Ken to take out Ray for what he's done, but Ken believes that Ray deserves to at least have a chance to try to redeem himself. All of these characters are not only career criminals but murderers, but they all feel like they have a code that they follow that makes it okay. They come to realize, however, that they all feel the need to redeem themselves for the pain they've caused in the world. While some characters might have rather simple redemption arcs, others have a lot more to atone for. They might have been full-on villains, or pushed into temporary villainy by someone else. Whatever the case, these characters often have a much rockier road to redemption. Sometimes a character just wants to clear their name. They never necessarily set out to be a bad person, but they also weren't really trying to be a hero either. But now, they've reached the point where they just want to do whatever they can to set things right and get out of the game forever. A lieutenant in the Imperial Army, Andor's Gorn was initially very loyal to the Empire, but after becoming disillusioned after the loss of his love, he quietly switches sides. He doesn't necessarily get some huge redemption moment where he can feel like all of the evil he aided in has been washed away, but he does get to do his part in furthering the rebellion. Game of Thrones' Theon Greyjoy has a very up and down, well, mostly down trajectory, oscillating between doing what's right and what he thinks will win him the most power. He betrays Robb Stark, but that leads to him becoming captured by the terrifying Ramsay Bolton. Theon has his first big attempt at redemption when he helps Sansa escape this nightmare. Over the rest of the show, he continues to falter on his path towards good, but finds final redemption in the end by sacrificing himself to defend Bran. Even some of the biggest baddies have a heart hiding under all of those layers of villainy, and sometimes all it takes is a little looking inward, and usually some major pushback, to realize that they don't want to keep going down this dark path forever. Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Spike was a notoriously evil vampire who tortured his victims and even killed 2 Slayers. He was a major nemesis for the Scooby Gang, but eventually had to learn to work with them for the greater good, eventually becoming a genuine part of the gang himself. After a particularly vicious attack on Buffy, he realized how messed up he truly was and worked to regain his soul. Mean Girls is a great exploration of the many ways pain and frustration can lead people down a bad path, and how, as hard as it can be, looking inward and working on yourself is the only real solution. While Katie Heron is the fish out of water who allows herself to become corrupted by the sparkle of power, both Regina George and Janice Ian have been on the Mean Girl kick for a while. They found their own ways to survive in the hell of girl world, and it wasn't through the power of kindness. But in the end, all 3 find redemption through introspection.
Calling somebody else fat won't make you any skinnier. Calling someone stupid doesn't make you any smarter.
The Good Place was all about redemption. All of the characters came to realize that they had things in their past that they needed to atone for, and personality faults that they needed to work on, if they were ever really going to be ready to move on to the next phase of existence. Even literal demon Michael. Game of Thrones' Jaime Lannister is self-centered and willing to do whatever it takes to secure power for himself and his family. One of the first interactions we see of Jaime is him pushing a child out of a window to keep him quiet. So it's unsurprising that Jaime has a very long, hard road to redemption. He began using his abilities to save others instead of hurt them, and in the end was willing to put himself in harm's way in an attempt to aid in defeating the White Walkers. Prince Zuko is initially a principal antagonist on Avatar: The Last Airbender. As a member of the Fire Nation, he's been raised to believe in his own superiority and that whatever he wants is right. But when he actually meets Aang and the crew, he begins to realize the error of his ways, and finds a new fire burning within himself, one that leads him to desire to bring peace to the world.
But now, I have a new drive. I have to help you defeat my father and restore balance to the world.
Sometimes a story wants us to believe that a character has been redeemed, but no one really buys it. Often this occurs because the writers have decided, for whatever reason, that they want a villain to be a good person now, but want to speedrun any actual redemption arc. So it ends up feeling more like just hand-waving away all of the bad behavior instead of actually redeeming them. Some Pretty Little Liars fans felt that the show's choice to race through Allison's redemption arc so that she could rejoin the Liars felt a bit lackluster at best. She had spent seasons lying to and manipulating the girls, as well as being terrible to them in the time before her disappearance. But once she was back for good, it felt like a lot of her bad behavior got papered over to make it feel like she had a redemption arc instead of actually giving her one. Gossip Girl's Chuck Bass has probably one of the worst, not actually a redemption arcs ever. He's a bad guy through and through, who literally assaults 2 young women in the pilot and generally treats everyone around him like garbage, including being willing to trade his girlfriend Blair to his uncle for a hotel. Over time, we're given more insight into why he behaves the way he does, namely because of the treatment from his evil father Bart, but he never really works on becoming a better person. The show just tries to say he's changed without doing any of the actual work to create any kind of personal growth. In the end, he's still just the same Chuck Bass. Redemption stories aren't all black and white. Sometimes a character does try to atone, but fails in the end. And some characters just don't really care for redemption at all. The wrestler sees Randy attempting to make up for the pain he's caused others in his life, and he almost succeeds, but in the end, gives it up for one last chance at glory. Siler on Heroes had a few attempted redemption arcs, but in the end, he always ended up back on the side of villainy. Atonement is about this very issue. In the end, we find that the happy ending we thought Cecilia and Robbie had found was actually a fiction written by Bryony in an attempt to atone for how she had set off the events that ruined everyone's lives.
I wanted to give Robbie and Cecilia what they lost out on in life. I'd like to think this isn't weakness, but a final act of kindness.
On the other end of the spectrum are the characters who never really tried to begin with. The Roy children of Succession would all like to imagine themselves to be good people, but in the end, they were always willing to fight and harm anyone who got in their way on their quest for power until the very end. Breaking Bad's Walter White is the perfect example of someone who has no interest in being redeemed. As he comes to the end of his life, he does begin to understand the true gravity of all of the wrong he's done, but until the end, he's more interested in his glory and keeping his reputation alive than anything else. We all, or almost all, want to believe that at the end of the day, we're good people who do the best with the cards we're dealt. That's why we love watching a good redemption story. They remind us that even when we do make mistakes, there's always hope that we can make things right if we're willing to put in the work. Everybody loves a good comeback.
That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.